Well, it looks like the wave isn't playing in the beginning either. Jeez whiz. Okay, I'll fix it later. Anybody good technically? I mean, I am so overloaded. You know, everything that we do about this program, I do. There are a couple of exceptions, and there's some folks that help out very, very significantly here. But I got to tell you, the day in and day out grind, folks, it's me. And I'm overwhelmed, and it is really, really very, very difficult. All right. Let's talk about this issue of conspiracies. The question I have for you is, are you personally a conspiracy theorist? The reason I ask that is because we constantly hear about, you know, people who are in conspiracy to commit crime. I mean, they charge, generally, when they cannot get a criminal on anything else, they get them on conspiracy to commit a crime. In other words, they haven't actually committed the crime, they just conspired. A conspiracy, for the record, is two or more people who are plotting an illegal act. Now, we're going to assume, for the record, that an illegal act is actually an illegal act and not something that, you know, we currently have in the law that is called illegal, even though it's not. But the point of being a conspiracy theorist is quite significant. And the reason I say that is because you can't have it both ways. You know, a lot of people say, well, you know, I don't like conspiracy theories. For the record, the term conspiracy theorist was developed by, of all organizations, the CIA, the king of conspiracies. In the 1960s, they coined the term conspiracy theory in relation to the JFK murders. If you went against the official record of the JFK murders, then you were a conspiracy theorist, right? And that was it was a denigrating term. It was like being called, something negative. If you were a conspiracy theorist, everyone else looked down their nose at you. That was the game plan. It was intended to make you feel ashamed, to make you feel belittled, to make you feel as if you are lesser. So, in reality, when you look at conspiracy theories, I'm going to just throw a couple out here now, and I'd like you to think about it for a minute. I mean, do you believe that 19 Arabs, none of whom, and by the way, they lived in a third world country for the most part, right? I mean, these guys all came from very humble beginnings. They came here to the United States where they overstayed visas and they got accustomed to drinking and sex and pornography and all the hated things of the West. And 19 Arabs came here, and none of whom could fly planes with any kind of proficiency. Some of them had training in a simulator, but none of them had actually ever flown a plane of that magnitude. And that they pulled off the crime of the century under the direction of a guy who is in dialysis, effectively living in a cave in Afghanistan. And furthermore, that they managed to fly 2 of those planes into buildings that, when you're up in the air like that, are the size of a pencil. I mean, let's be honest, right? You're sitting here and you're trying to direct a plane into a building the size of a pencil. You have no idea how to turn it. You have no idea how to steer it. You have no idea how to keep yaw and pitch and straight and level flight. You know how easy it would be to dump a jet by simply just turning without rudders? And then there was another one that was actually able to skim the ground. I mean, he came in for a landing, if you will. And he smacked into a building just above ground level. How perfect was that? I mean, and guess what? There were no wing marks on the side of the building. There was just a round hole right in the side of the building. And there was no wing that hit the building. How did that happen? I mean, if you look at the building in New York, you could see after the building after the plane first went into it, that there was a round hole and then two oblong holes where the wings went through the glass. Where was that at the Pentagon? But the official story says that's how it happened. How about a guy by the name of Barack Hussein Obama, who has very questionable history and rose from nowhere amid the ranks of the unwashed scum, the pothead who was the head of, or the not even the head, just a member of the Choom gang. And he's now become the most powerful man on the planet in what, 20 years? I mean, he's running a nation, but he's running it into the ground. And this is a guy who's, of course, got no experience. He's never held a job. He's never ran a business. He barely did vote at all in his short congressional seating because he was making sure that there was no record that could be held against him. He posted 2 different birth certificates, both, by the way, which have been proven empirically to have been falsified. He displays a fraudulent selective service card, which again has been empirically proven to be faked. And he has a social security number of a woman who died at 90 years old from a state he's never actually lived in. Then he's actually got a book out there where he admits that he was born in Kenya by his own admission, and nobody questions whether or not, I mean, that's just the accidental history version. You know, there was a time when we were told that in politics, there are no coincidences. If you think that these people who are currently running our government, and your state governments, I might add, so make no mistake about this, there's no pass for those people. If you think this is all just accidental history, the theory of accidental history, where stuff just kind of happens, and there's really no intentional follow-through, or there's no plot, no plan here, no mass plan, no long-term plan, no short-term, no, it's just the way it happens. Events conspire in a perfect storm. Then you would still be a conspiracy theorist. You would be a conspiracy theorist because you would believe that a conspiracy of nature could occur. How about a Congress who does everything that is exactly opposite and diametrically opposed to what their platform ascribes to and states that they should follow through and believe in and carry out? How about a Congress who makes promises to get into office and then immediately breaks them? How about a Congress who does everything or passes laws that never apply to them? How about a court system that defies logic and written directions from our founders and our Constitution, which is what the foundational base of the entire nation is? I mean, how about a court system that literally can figure out ways to make laws legal, even though the Constitution specifically addresses that fact and says you can't do that? Is that just accidental history? How about a nation that is already bankrupt? I mean, we owe $17.5 trillion. At least that's what's initially national debt. And then we have another unfunded liability of another 120 trillion, and then another unfunded liability of 200 trillion in guarantees. We only have a gross domestic product of 16 trillion, which means that theoretically they'd have to take all the money from everybody for all things sold, and we still wouldn't be able to just pay off our immediate debt. How about a nation that's bankrupt, but somehow seems to be able to borrow more from a financial system that it already owns? I mean, was that just accidental history? Or is there a conspiracy associated with that? I mean, we have hundreds of thousands of Americans who are in prisons right now for conspiring. I mean, these people conspired to commit a crime or an act that would be run afoul of the law. They conspired to do a drug deal, or they conspired to commit some kind of an act. Conspired perhaps to rob a bank. Didn't actually do it, just conspired to do it. Now, it's interesting that everyone would agree that there are a lot of people in prison who belong in prison for conspiring to commit some kind of a crime. I mean, a person who conspires to have someone else murdered to get them out of their life, murder for hire. People who would conspire to, move a ton of heroin or cocaine or some other drug. People who would conspire to rob a bank, and they go out and they get they get some ski masks and they get a hold of some guns and they steal a car so that they've got a getaway car that nobody will recognize. And then somebody gets cold feet and spills the beans, and the next thing you know, they're in jail for conspiring. They didn't actually do it. And even if they did, it doesn't really make any difference. Many times they'll charge them with the crime and the conspiracy to commit the crime. So it's 2 counts, so they can give them a longer jail sentence. But do you believe that it is only the unwashed masses that are conspiring? I mean, is it possible that nobody in government or business would do such a thing because they have this high moral ground, this threshold of honor that's so much higher than the peasantry? Really? I mean, perhaps you're giving them more credit than they're entitled to. I mean, if there are literally 2 million people in prison and another 7 million who are currently alive that have been in prison, and that's a pretty stout number. What, 9 or 10 million people? That's what, 3% of the population? And that's only the 3% that got caught, right? I mean, how many other people are there that didn't get caught? I mean, when we hear about the trading games that are going on and the black markets that are enabling certain brokerage houses to do a trade, knowing full well that you've agreed to pay $12.50 for that stock, and they can go out and buy it for $12.30 and make, a quick profit on it if they buy it before your trade is executed and then sell you theirs. Isn't that a conspiracy? I mean, basically, what it really comes down to, folks, is you can't have it both ways. Either the world is full of conspiracies or it's not. You can't tell me that the people in business and the people in government have such a high moral standard that these concerns don't apply to them. That you can't ascribe conspiracy to them because they've got such a high standard. I mean, these people make our decisions. They're policymakers. They wouldn't think conspiratorially. Well, let's see. How about an IRS that at the direction of the President of the United States is being used as a weapon against the citizens that actually own it? How about that? How about an EPA, an Environmental Protection Agency, that, for all intents and purposes, is not interested in justice? In fact, they conspired, as I discussed with you yesterday, to do testing, human testing, without informing the people who were the testees that they were probably putting their lives in danger. I mean, I guess my point here is this. If you're a conspiracy theorist, then you're a conspiracy theorist. And conspiracies exist all over the place. Or you don't believe in conspiracies and you subscribe to the accidental history theory. It's all happenstance. It's all just coincidence. Things just kind of happen. And as a result of this happening, then that happens. And as a result of that happening, then something else happens. But there's no plot to it all. The DHS has taken on a life of its own just because, well, physics dictates it. I say that you need to look at this issue and you need to begin to question everything, utilizing critical thinking skills. That means that you look at some issues which you have a resolute opinion on and maybe question yourself. Maybe question your bias, your motives, your belief systems, and begin to wonder whether or not I've actually just bought and swallowed somebody else's idea or whether it's actually my own. I mean, on the first point, I've looked at some of the evidence about 9/11, and while I haven't actually made a determination and a physical decision that I believe that the United States of America physically created 9/11, I've no doubt that it was not happenstance and it was not the work simply of 19 third world Arabs who were wiping their butt with a clamshell or their raw hand a week and a half before. And they managed to fly 2 gigantic, unwieldy Airbuses into pencils. I don't buy it. And I don't buy that there was a building that was untouched by the other 2 big buildings that collapsed that literally fell down on its own just in sympathy. Were we behind it? I don't know. Did we know it was going to happen? Of that, I have no doubt. I mean, empirically, we now know that World War II, we knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen. And all of the warnings were given to the right people, and they refused to take any action to defend and protect it other than to remove 85% of the fleet. But they left 15% there as a token fleet so that the situation could be used to their advantage. Folks, don't take my word for it. Go look it up for yourself. Do your own homework. A month before the Japanese struck Pearl Harbor, we knew. 2 weeks before they actually struck it, we started moving ships away. They knew. But they conveniently allowed a small token force to be there so that they would have a reason to say, America, look what they did to us. Because they knew that it would get the Indians all stirred up. Like as if they'd handed out jugs of firewater. If you take ethnic offense to that, go crap in your hat and leave me alone. The truth is, we also know for a fact, empirically, indubitably, undoubtedly, unarguably, that the Lusitania in World War II was used as a cheap parlor trick to get Americans angry enough to say, we'll go to war in Europe for a war that doesn't really affect us. We know that the Gulf of Tonkin was another one. So, I don't care whether you call it a false flag event, which would lead to a greater conspiracy principle, i.e., you actually had an active hand in it, versus we knew about it and we just let it happen, and we said, you know what, this is coming. We know it's coming, so let's figure out how we can utilize it to our best advantage instead of stopping the plot. I mean, how about a nation that spends, in the last 13 years, since 9/11, we've spent a couple of $1 trillion on national defense, national security. And yet, we've missed every signal. We've missed every opportunity to thwart an attack. We didn't catch it when Putin was plotting to go in and take over Crimea. And now they want a Crimea a river. Well, we didn't realize. No, that's because you didn't realize, because you were sitting there worrying about whether Bob was selling 5 joints out of his sock than whether Vladimir was plotting the overthrow of a nation that was his neighbor. You see, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy realist. They do exist. They do happen. And the truth of the matter is, we're embroiled in one up to our nose. The world is full of conspiracy. We may not necessarily know all the details, but it doesn't mean it's not so. And if you want to sit and ascribe the concept that conspiracies happen every day amongst the peasantry, but not amongst the elitists in D.C., or your state capital, or the DHS and your local police department, or the DHS and your county sheriff's office, or the EPA, then you're a fool. You don't need details to know that a conspiracy is being accomplished. You don't need to know what the end plot is. But when guys go out and steal a car and buy ski masks and duct tape and rope, and they've got a drawing of the floor plan of the bank, and one of the people in the car is a known safecracker, I think you got enough evidence. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about monkey wrenching. How do we put sand in the gears to stop tyranny? I'm going to blow your mind with a couple of stories, and I'm going to give you some ideas. And then I'd like you to creatively put your own thought to this and see what you can do on your local level, as well as a regional and national level, to carry the concept of the monkey wrench forward. Stick with us. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We'll return in just a moment. You can communicate with me by sending me email to mike@americasvoicenow.org.